reviewing Ferryman of the Dead. This is one of the big 12% pastry stouts with a big name, following in the spirits of Supreme Allied Commander and Emperor of the Known Universe. So, you know, we've been doing pastry stouts in the Valley as lab rats and whatnot for years and years. So we've become very good at it. And this particular pastry stout, Ferryman of the Dead, is a German chocolate cake. So you've got pecans, you've got coconut, you've got chocolate, all together in this pastry milk stout. And this started in the Valley as a Imperial lab rat, and then in a 1/4% version around September of 2018. So a couple years after we opened, it became a super lab rat around 11.5% around June 2020 in the Valley. You guys loved it. 4.44 on Untapped. The Imperial version was 4.15. We also did an extreme version at around 16%. 4.272. You guys seem to prefer that 12% range, whatever about the 16% version you didn't quite like as much, but 4.2. That's nothing wrong with that. So this is your favorite version, this percent. And what is Ferryman of the Dead? Where did that come from? Well, if you are familiar with Greek mythology, Charon is the Ferryman of the Dead. He ferries the souls of dead bodies across the river Styx. And usually there's a payment. You put a coin in the mouth and you're allowed passage from the living side of the world to the dead side of the world on the other side of river Styx. And if there is no coin placed in the mouth of the recently deceased person once they're buried, you have to roam the shores of the river Styx for 100 years before you're considered to be allowed back in and going to the dead side. So when I die, anybody please put a coin in my mouth when you bury me, because I don't want to roam for 100 years. Just let me to get to the dead side. But anyway, the beer base on this is our big 12% Imperial Stout, Pilsner malt. We have 3 different crystal malts, Crystal 40, 80, and 120 to lend body and unfermentable sugars, dextrins, roasted barley, the classic component of a stout. Carapils, and we use 10% oats, hence the double oatmeal Imperial Stout for body and creaminess and smoothness. And that's about this beer. It's more of a pain in the butt to make. It's such a big mash. There's a whole lot of grain. It fills our mash tun up. We got to do a few special things to make sure we water it right. There's no stuck sparge and all of that, but we've kind of got it down pretty good. And while I open this up for an evaluation, the coolest thing about this series is probably not many of you have known unless you go to the Valley and you frequent that area. But the Merchant Restaurant, which is at the other end of our street in the Valley, they started as a distillery about a year or 2 ago. They've got a few things out now, vodkas and rums, I believe. They just released, or are about to release, their first batch of bourbon, and it's called Towpath Distillery, from the Piscazzi family of the Merchant. And Anthony Piscazzi phoned me up one day and says, "Ron, I've got 5 barrels that we just emptied from our first batch of bourbon. You want them?" I'm like, "Hell yeah, what a cool tie-in." 2 Valley locations nearly right next to each other that all of you have probably been to both locations. You know, we're about to release Ferryman of the Dead, and it just so happens that there's a little bit of the way January and February have worked out. The craft beer market's a little saturated on the shelves, so we've had to pull back some of our canning runs. And we have this extra beer, and we had about 5 to 6 barrels of Ferryman of the Dead that we weren't canning. And what are we going to do with this? And Brad and I talked about, you know, well, we got to barrel it. Okay, let's buy 5 barrels from somewhere, all the same. And like the day later, Anthony called me. He's like, "Ron, I've got 5 barrels." I'm like, Hell yeah! So we took delivery of these 5 barrels yesterday, wet, perfect. So we are going to be putting Ferryman of the Dead to sleep in the barrels, probably at least 4 to 6 months. We'll be tasting them, and that'll be a future release. But I just thought that it worked out coincidentally so cool. 2 Valley businesses, you know, coming together, not a couple of releases. So that is exciting and something to look forward to. But let's evaluate the beer. Got a little bit of coconut on the nose. Remember, coconut, pecans, chocolate. You almost kind of get a little bit of coconut, chocolate on the nose. The pecans minimalized. And then on the flavor, you got the pecan, coconut, chocolate. So it's kind of like reversed a little bit. Those oats really smooth it out. It's thick, definitely thick. But no, this is definitely a dessert beer. End of the night, you're gonna love it. 12%. Be careful. If you start on these, you're going to have to taper off. So you start with a couple of these, then by the end of the night, you're going to be drinking R.Shea Light. So that is this week's release. We hope you stop in and pick up a 4-pack or try the draft.
My favorite one is the dog with the alien and the heart.
Aliens, hearts, and dogs.
Yes.